so that you can. The workshop is designed to show you how to use some tools so you can find the alternatives yourself and help your friends and neighbors and family members find these alternatives. So we're going to get right to where we go to use this workshop by doing a share screen. So to find the workshop, you go to this website. It is Rivers-Mountains-GreenFaith.org. And this workshop is being presented through Rivers Mountains GreenFaith. We're a multi-faith climate and environmental action group. Our area of operation is basically from the Kingston, New Paltz area all the way up to Glens Falls, and from the eastern Catskills all the way into the western Berkshires. We are in coalition with GreenFaith National, as well as Stop the Money Pipeline and Third Act. You can take some time on this website if you'd like and go read about our origins and take a nice little tours around the mountains and rivers that we take our names from. But what we want to do here on this webpage, right up front here, is come up here to the menu bar. And we're going to click on individual divestment. And again, when you have some time, you can check out what we're doing with climate finance and read about the Red Rebel Brigade and take a look at the gallery. But let's go to individual divestment. And this takes you to this landing page. And it has the workshop calendar. So you can see here we are at June 14th with Peace Action. But we want to go to the workshop by clicking on this button. But let's read about this a moment. Align your money with your values. That's the name of the workshop. And it's for individuals and organizations on how to move finances from funding fossil fuel extraction, production, and distribution and direct to other more meaningful investments for us. But the question here is, move our finances. Now, I don't remember any time in my life where I consciously went out and invested, mindfully went out and invested in fossil fuels. So what has happened here is unwittingly, many of us have seen our bank deposits, the way we use our credit cards, and even the insurance premiums that we pay for our home and auto unwittingly go to finance the fossil fuel industry. So let's go to workshop. And in the next 90 minutes, we're going to go through the 4 parts of this workshop. Personal banking, we'll be here for about 10 or 15 minutes. Credit cards, again, about 10 or 15 minutes. Then we'll get into home and auto insurance, and we'll close out, hopefully giving ourselves enough time, 30 minutes or so, on investments. So back up here as we're talking about unwittingly getting involved in financing fossil fuels. Let's start with a simple story. And the story is about Mr. Peabody. Mr. Peabody has a coal company. Now, there really is a Peabody Coal Company. And Mr. Peabody comes to me one day and says, Michael, I got this mountaintop down in Pennsylvania that I want to take the top off of to get to some coal. And I don't want to be using my working capital. I want to take a loan. So loan me some of your money for this project. And I say to Mr. Peabody, I don't think so. That just doesn't align with my values. It's not something I want to do. So Mr. Peabody gives me a nod, says goodbye, and walks down the street and walks into my bank and says to the banker, hey, I got this mountaintop down in Pennsylvania I want to take the top off of to get to some coal. Loan me some of Michael's money. And he does. Now, that's not just a simple story, because that's kind of how it works. Ask the question, why do most of us use banks in the first place? Or credit unions? And the answer for most of us, I think, would be, that we are looking for a place where our money is conveniently and securely deposited. It is convenient and secure. So certainly there's nothing more convenient than having a shoebox of money in my closet, but it's not very secure. So I go down to the bank, and that's what they give us. They give us a debit card and a checking account to make it very convenient. They give us nice little banking hours that we can come and go and do personal banking if we need to. And it's secured by even insuring up to $250,000 of deposits. Pretty good deal. But we don't ask anything else of them. They can literally take our deposited money and loan it out to almost anybody they want to. There are some restrictions. It has to all be legal. But they don't have to ask us where they're going to loan the dollars. So now we ask the next question, well, who are these banks? Chase, Citi, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, US Bank. We could list some others, Barclays. Who are these banks? Well, they exist for the purposes of providing very, very complex banking services to Wall Street companies, let's call them. So that's why we call them Wall Street banks. The Wall Street banks exist for providing financial services to Wall Street companies. In fact, these services are so complex that regional and local community banks and credit unions cannot meet the needs of the major Wall Street companies. So they're out there providing financial services, loans, and in some cases, investments, but they're loaning money and providing these banking services to major operations. Some of them are very good. They may be hospitals, schools, roads, windmill projects, solar projects. But disproportionately, and you can read all about it, disproportionately, they are providing money to the fossil fuel industry. Now, some sources that you might want to go read if you need to have some extra backup. Here on Green America, Get a Better Bank, you can read all about it. With our allies at Stop the Money Pipeline, they have another global alliance for banking on values. And again, you can read all about it. So this workshop is how we can get our money away from the Wall Street banks who are funding the fossil fuel industry. The easiest way to look at this is if you want to go from doing, let's call harm, to doing no harm, just leave these banks and go anywhere. But we want to go one step further, not from just doing harm to doing no harm. How about having our money do good? Well, now you got to go out and do some research. Over here on the right-hand side of this webpage, we have these three searches: Mighty Deposits, Bank Green, and Bank for Good. Take a look at all of them when you have some time. We're going to look at Mighty Deposits. So here is Mighty Deposits. You can scroll down and read where they get their data sources. This is all non-proprietary data that's coming in from US and federal, state and federal regulatory agencies, Small Business Administration, and the like. This is a women's cooperative that is functioning as a not-for-profit. And you can see it's a rather basic website. You can click here and look up your bank and learn about its impact. I like using these buttons up here at the top of the menu. Find banks. Now, if you're looking for a credit union, you have to do find credit unions. So let's start out right away with find banks. And you see here, very simple web page. I want a bank located in anywhere. That is anything. So let's say that my cousin Sue's moving off to Wichita and she wants to have some help finding a green bank. We would type in Wichita. On this, that is anything. We're going to leave it at anything for now, but here are, again, I want to see my money going from doing harm, not just to no harm, but to doing good. Well, I want a bank that's above average in small business lending. That aligns with my values. I want a bank that's above average in small farm. See, we call these the good guy buttons. And you can even go and look for a bank that gets the B Corporation certification. When you have some time, take a note to yourself. Go research B-Corp. This is a vetting service that ranks businesses, including banks, by their sustainability. In our household, we use the B Corporation, like a lot of people use Consumer Reports or Wirecutter. That's where we go to find out where to get textiles, where to buy our laundry detergent and the like. So check out B Corp when you have some time. But let's just leave it at anything for right now. So let's look up bank by name instead of using these regions. Somebody come off of Moot and give me a bank that you want to look up. Anybody?
Bank of Greene County.
Bank of Greene County.
Thank you.
Now you can see here, it starts to kind of help us out as we go. So far, not yet. There he goes. Catskill. And then we just do a go. Now, as we look at this, the Bank of Greene County is what we're going to call a local community bank. We're going to have three categories that we talk about. We have the Wall Street banks, we have the community banks, and we have credit unions. And community banks and credit unions are very much the same. I think you understand the difference that a credit union, the depositors actually own the credit union, where a bank, it is an institution that may even be publicly traded. But amongst the community banks, there are two types that we talk about. The large regional banks, think Key Bank, or you could even think Community Bank that came in and bought up the Kinderhook Bank a few years ago. Or you have these local community banks, and Bank of Greene County would be a local community bank. And you see here that 77 of all the dollars out of 100, 77%, is going back into the community. That's 107% above the industry average. I like to see this number somewhere between 60 and 80. You really don't want to see it much over 80 because they do need to, they shouldn't be loaning out all of their money. They need to keep some of it back. And you can see here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the good guy buttons. Let's go over here and take a little more of a look. You'll see here that they are quite heavy in public works. And one of the reasons is the Bank of Greene County has a division within it that does a lot of banking for municipalities. The town of Chatham, I think the village of Chatham, all bank at the Bank of Greene County. I'm very active as a consultant with the town of Woodstock. They use the Bank of Greene County. You can also see that they're very heavy in housing, 95% above the industry average, very heavy in small. This is something that starts to look like it aligns with my values. Now, full disclosure, I like this so much that the Bank of Greene County is actually my bank. Let's take another look at another bank. Does somebody have another one? Come off Moot.
Yeah, Trusco.
Trusco. And you see here it comes up. That's exactly the one we're looking for. Bank of Greene. So here again, Trusco would be seen in my book as still being a local community bank. They're not really a regional community bank. Like say Berkshire Bank is a regional community bank. And they're also right up there at that $70, $72 in this case. They are in 5 states, so they are starting to be a little bit more like a regional bank. And they have 2 of the good guy buttons. And you can see here that they're very heavy on housing, not so much on the others. So they've been focusing a lot on housing investments. Let's move over to, does somebody want to, let's take a look at a bad guy bank. Can somebody give me, which one?
I just did give you a bad guy bank.
Trusco?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Well, no, not when it comes to what we're doing.
No, but not according to what you got. It's just, but there's other services too.
Yeah. Not
what about TD, Toronto?
Okay, let's take a look at TD Bank. Now, is it going to give us TD Bank? Yeah, okay. TD stands for Toronto and Dominion, but this is the Wilmington, Delaware. It is a Canadian-based bank, but they're licensed to do business in New York State through TD Bank NA. Now, what you notice here is you haven't seen this button before. Top funder of fossil fuels. Now, if you don't see this button, it doesn't mean that they're a fossil-free bank. Trusco is a fossil-free bank. Bank of Greene County definitely is. But let's look at, if we had typed in Key Bank. Key Bank is a community bank. It's not a Wall Street bank. But some years ago, they got together with M&T Bank, and they did fund a frack gas pipeline out by Buffalo. Now, they're not in any way a top funder of fossil fuels, but you can't say that they are completely fossil free. We still recommend Key Bank as a viable option for somebody who's looking for fossil free banks, because again, they are just, it's a small fraction of the loan that they gave, and they're not in the business out there regularly doing this. TD Bank, 32 of the community dollars or 32 of the deposited dollars are going into the community. And this is what you expect. If we had clicked on Citibank or Chase, that number would be $11. And the thing is that they are considered a Wall Street bank. They're not there for investing in the community. They're there for investing and financing the Wall Street companies. Again, some of what they do is good. A lot of what they do is not good. They are about above average in public works. If you click and find out a little bit more data on there, you'll see that they are pretty low, except for on some households and some public works here. But they are a major investor in fossil fuels. I don't want to spend too much time here. We can always come back at the end of the workshop, but let's just come off of share here for a little bit and any questions that you might have.
The only question I had, and you're doing one heck of a job. This is absolutely amazing. But I'm having a little trouble seeing some of the small print. And I don't think you can do too much on your end, but I can always go back to the original website and look at it myself. You know what I'm saying?
Right, Bob. And again, remember, what we're trying to do here is we know what the issue is. We want to keep our money away from the fossil fuel banks, and we want to get them to where our money's just not going there. But even one more, it would be nice if it's going to where it's investing in our community. I mentioned why I use the Bank of Greene County is that I want to see what's the saying that we use? Eat local, shop local, well, bank local. Now, the workshop is about fossil fuel free. I'm adding an extra value, and my value is local economy. That may not be yours. So another value that people like to add are democracy. And where you find democracy is through your credit union. And around here, we're very, very fortunate that we have two very good credit unions, three if you're coming out of the Albany area. But one of the better credit unions in the region is the Greylock Federal Credit Union. They are very progressive when it comes to the immigrant community. They're also very progressive when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community. And they are putting a lot of their money back into the community. So we like to push credit unions. And so we also like to push the small local community bank that is investing right here in our community. So any other questions? Do you want to go back? We could take one quick look back at how you find the credit union. Let's just make certain that we do that right. So back here on Mighty Deposits, and up here at the top, find credit unions, not find banks. And again, we could go in here and we could type in Broadview. They haven't changed over yet. So we have to do state employees, credit union, SEFCU. See, they haven't changed their name yet here. Now, this is somewhat surprising. As you know, SEFCU has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. They just merged, and that's why they're now called Broadview. Only $48. This is below industry average. Now, a little point here I'm going to make when we go over and look at Greylock. The industry average for community investments for banks is much higher than it is for community banks, because credit unions are even more oriented towards community. Now, SEFCU does have a good guy button on low income, but they're not putting a lot of money back in. Without spending any more time here, let's just go over and look at Greylock. Oops. See, $87. That's almost too high. It's above the industry average. Now, if that was a bank, it would be like 160% above industry average. But for a credit union, again, it has a higher expectation. And look at all the extra good guy buttons that come out here from the Greylock Credit Union. So when you have some time, I like to say next Thanksgiving, when you have all your family together, instead of watching a football game on TV, get out Mighty Deposits and look up everybody's bank. You'll have a great time. Let's go take a look at credit cards. Now, this is much the same, but yet somewhat different. The sameness comes by the banks. If you have a credit card with Chase, Citi, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, even Capital One and Credit One, then the money from the transaction fees, the annual fees, and the interest on the debt is being invested by these banks to fund fossil fuel projects. Now, I use some different terms there. When we talked about the banks, that was our money that was deposited, that was being loaned. Here we're using terms, this is their money now that they got through these fees, and they are now turning around and they're investing in fossil fuels, different than making loans. Now, their investments may be in the form of a loan, but it is also very likely that it's being a direct investment through private equity or public equity, usually private equity. So let's go back and take a look at what's going on here. Where does the money come from? It's not a deposit, but it is money that is coming through the system. So you and I, we decide to go out and make a purchase. It's no longer our money. We have whatever we purchased. It's now their money. Well, but we've started a cause and effect, a chain reaction, a karmic sequence, however you want to look at it, of we did something and it's going to have consequences. It's going to go someplace. So when you start to spin that top, do you want to see it go in a good direction, or do you want to see it going in a harmful direction? Well, here's where you have choice. It's not as easy as just changing your bank account because the alternatives are slim. So the money comes from, let's talk about it. First, let's talk about annual fees. Most of us probably don't have a credit card any longer that has an annual fee. Maybe you do. And maybe that annual fee is only $70. But you can imagine that if a card is out there and they have 2 million people that are paying a $70 a year annual fee, they have $140 million now that is theirs to use. And disproportionately, they're using that money into fossil fuel industry. They're using it for some good stuff, but disproportionately, it's going into the fossil fuel industry. So that's the annual fees. The next one, and this is where the big bucks are the interest on the debt that is being carried. Now, I certainly remember times, college, buying the first house, having those kids, where we had to go to the credit card every so often for short-term debt. Americans carry a lot of credit card debt, and it adds up by the time millions of people carrying that debt to literally trillions of dollars are being funneled out of our personal finances into these banks that are issuing these credit cards that are, again, are disproportionately going off and funding fossil fuels. Now, I no longer have a card that has annual fees. I no longer have credit card debt. So what my participation is, and I think probably yours too, are these transaction fees. And you're aware of this. that when you go to a restaurant, let's say, and you have a $100 tab, that restaurant is only going to get $97. 3% is going to be held back by the credit card, by the bank that issues the credit card. Now that 3%, now sometimes it's 7%, sometimes it's 2%, sometimes it's 5%. We're going to use 3% for this workshop. That comes back to where? Some of it is going to go to us as the consumer for the reward of us using that card. It's our reward points. Now, some of it comes cash back. Some of it comes in terms of airline miles, or you can save up and buy commodities, electronic devices and whatnot. You know how it works. So let's say that with most of these cards, about 1% comes back to you as the consumer. The other 2%, what happens to that? Well, that depends on whether or not the issuing bank is also the branding bank. So if we have a city card that is being issued, like their Sapphire card, that's a 2% cashback card. So 2% goes to you, 1% goes to city. Now, at some places, the bank does not issue the card. They merely brand the card and somebody else issues that. So let's take a pause right here and go over and talk about this aspect of branding and issuing. Branding and issuing. And what I'm going to pick on, first of all, is going to be what we call an affinity card over here. So here's the Green America Affinity Card. We are close partners with Green America, like to support them. Maybe you have an affinity card with Sierra Club and you like to support them. These come into play where this allows us to use their card, and out of that 3%, let's say, 0.5% is going to go to Green America to support their work, or Sierra Club here. And that's a way of giving a passive donation. Every time I use the card, I've given a donation to, a small one, but I've given a donation to Green America. And I get 1% back as reward points. So out of that 3%, 0.5% goes to Green America, 1% comes back to me. What happens to the other 1.5%? Well, it, in this particular case, goes to TCM Bank. Now, if I was using Sierra Club, same scenario, what happens to that 1.5%? It goes back to Beneficial State Bank. So the brand is Green America. The issuing bank is TCM. The brand is Sierra Club. The issuing bank is Beneficial State Bank. So in some cases, it's not that we're doing an affinity card. It may be, let's pick on Amalgamated Bank here. Now, Amalgamated Bank is a very popular bank with the environmental community. It was founded, it's a New York City bank. It was founded by labor unions decades ago. It is a very progressive bank. People like to use it, but they decided not to get to issue their own credit cards. They merely brand it. Their cards are being issued by First National Bank of Omaha, back up here, FNBO, First National Bank of Omaha, which is a fossil-free bank that's based in Omaha. It's a very large bank. So they're branding, but another bank is issuing, just like Green America is branding and another bank is issuing. I'm going to pick on those of you that are here in the Capital District or over in Columbia County. Community Bank, they're based in Syracuse. They're the ones that bought up the Kinderhook Bank, and they also bought up some banks in the Albany area. So Community Bank, they're just like Amalgamated. They decided they weren't going to do their own credit card. So they actually brand it, and guess what? It's also issued by First National Bank of Omaha. I'm going to pick on Berkshire Bank because I'm really big on Berkshire Bank as a green bank. They're one of the best banks out there as far as a green portfolio bank. They're even doing green bonds now. But sad to say, they decided not to issue their own credit card. They brand one, but their card is issued by Elon Financial, which is part of US Bank and a major investor in fossil fuels. So here you have a situation where a good bank has a dirty card. When it comes to Amalgamated and Community, good banks that have good cards. Now, if you have the need to go looking for a card. So you have a Wells Fargo card, or you have a Bank of America card, and you say, I got to get rid of this. Where do I go? The best thing to do is find yourself a community bank or a credit union that issues its own card. Because if you found yourself a green bank or a green credit union that's issuing their own card, you've taken care of two problems at once. But what happens if your green bank, Bank of Greene County, does not even offer a credit card? Well, now you got to go looking, as I did. I went looking and I ended up with the amalgamated card that is issued by First National Bank of Omaha. Some other people in our family, friends and neighbors, they stayed with the community bank. They are also with First National Bank of Omaha. Now, if you can, you may want to try to get the Evergreen card itself. This is a 2% cashback card, has excellent customer service. The same customer service, by the way, that you get from these cards, because it's coming from First National Bank of Omaha, but this is a 2% cashback card. Now, the problem is I can't get this card. My lifelong friend, Bill, who lives in Stephentown, he could get that card. My daughter, Megan, who lives down in Stone Ridge, she got that card. I can't get it. The reason I can't get it is I live in a zip code where they are issuing somebody else's card. They're issuing the community bank, which is in Chatham, which is in my zip code. So through a non-compete agreement, I can't get that card directly. I have to go elsewhere. So that's where I went here. You can click on these links sometime and see if you can get it. If they reject you, you'll know why. And you can click on these links and make an application there. You cannot get the beneficial state bank card on the East Coast. This is for the workshops I do that are out on the West Coast. Beneficial is probably seen as one of the 2 or 3 greenest banks in the country, but again, they're not issuing their credit card out here. I don't want to spend too much more time until we go to questions, but are these things called store cards down here? Store cards down in the lower corner from Lowe's, Verizon. Well, what's going on with them? Some store cards are issued by Citi. Some store cards are issued by Chase and the like, all these fossil-free banks up here. But most store cards are issued by Synchrony or Community. So how do you know? You look on the back of your Verizon card, you look on your back of Sam's card, and it will say whether it's coming from Citi, Chase, Synchrony, or Community. Synchrony and Community are not brick and mortar banks. They are banks that exist for the purposes of issuing store cards for other institutions. Amazon has some cards issued by Synchrony. Amazon also has some cards issued by Citi. Now, I just want to make a quick note here. TCM up here. TCM is not a brick and mortar bank. They're like Community and Synchrony. They exist for the purposes of issuing credit cards for other institutions, including Green America and including some other banks. First National Bank of Omaha and Beneficial State Bank, they are brick and mortar banks that are fossil-free banks. Now, those of you that are going through credit unions, again, preferably you have a credit union that's issuing its own card. If it's not, they're very likely using CUNA. CUNA is an institution that exists for the purposes of issuing credit cards for credit unions. They're a lot like TCM. I didn't say anything about American Express, nor Discover, nor the Diners Club. Discover now owns Diners Club. But those 3 cards are you could consider as being fossil free. American Express is not in the fossil fuel finance business. They're not making loans, they're not investing. They make their money on financial transactions. So if you have an American Express card, there might be other reasons not to have it, like high annual fees, high transaction fees. Some places the transaction fees are so high, they don't take American Express. You've seen that commercial. But if your goal is to be away from fossil fuel American Express card does not put you in that category. So a lot said there quickly, and we need to move on in order to get through our full 90 minutes. But any questions, thoughts, otherwise on credit cards? Wendy?
Michael, are you going to be able to squeeze in divesting from the weapon industry as well?
That's with
Or
retirement.
is that,
That comes with the investment portfolio.
okay, thanks.
So any questions on credit cards getting away? Yeah, we got something in the chat here. No, that's just the link. Okay. So let's go into the next part. This was a surprise to me. Home and auto insurance. I always thought I was getting my home and auto insurance from a home and auto insurance company. Now, I'm not going to be exaggerating here. We're actually getting it through a fossil fuel insurance company. Now, as I said earlier in the workshop on Wall Street banks, they exist for the purposes of providing financial services to Wall Street companies. That's what they do. Community banks, they exist for providing financial services down into the community with small businesses, homeowners, people like you and me. That's what they do. Well, what do insurance companies do? They insure things. Now, you'd like to think, maybe you believe that insurance companies are adverse to risk, but in actuality, they love risk because the higher the risk, the higher the premium. And if the actuaries are doing their job correctly, the higher the profits. So insurance companies insure things. Here's an interesting arrangement. The fossil fuel industry does not like to use their money to do capital projects. When they want to build a new refinery, if they want to put in a new pipeline, if they want to buy a new tanker, they don't like to use their working capital. That's for other purposes. They like to take loans, investments, or grants. They want to use other people's money for these things. And there's tax reasons and whatnot for doing that. So when they go out looking for capital to build new projects, all of those three categories that I mentioned, loans, investors, or grants, those banks or those private investors, public investors, governments are going to look for insurance. They're not going to give them any money at all unless they have insurance. And you know this already, that when something goes wrong with a fossil fuel project, it goes wrong in a really big, bad way. Think the BP platform. Think the Exxon Valdez. Think that pipeline that just ruptured off in Kansas this past spring. A lot of damage. So nobody's going to give them any money unless they have insurance. Now, that's an insurance company's dream. They have a captive audience that has to come to them. So they come to Liberty Mutual, they come to Travelers, they come to Allstate, they come to Geico, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and they say, I need to have an insurance plan in order to get a dime for doing that Trans Mountain pipeline up in Canada or anything else that they're trying to build. And this is where we often say that if we could cut off the insurance of fossil fuel projects, you would stop all fossil fuel projects because they can't get their funding. So let's look at this a little bit further. Us, our home and auto insurance. We also are a captive audience for the insurance companies. When you go to buy a house, you have to have an insurance. And even if you pay cash for it, you better have insurance because that's quite a heavy investment. You want to be insured against fire and other type of loss. With a car, if you buy a car and you have a loan, you have to have insurance. And even if you don't have a loan, you still have to, by law, have at least liability insurance, and you probably also have collision insurance. So there are millions of Americans out there that have to have home insurance, that have to have car insurance. That is a captive audience for this insurance industry. So they take all of those premiums together with all the other premiums they get from businesses, and that's where they get their money. And again, like the credit card, it's no longer our money, it's theirs. And so they can turn around and they can loan it or they can invest it. It's their money. So let's take a little bit more look at what's going on there. And if you want to read more about how the industry works, I suggest that you go to the Rainforest Action Network and read all about it. Or you can come over here to Ensure Our Future and read all about it. You're probably hearing my dog bark in the background. I apologize for that. Where did I leave off? Oh, as far as their insuring and investing in fossil fuels. What we've been talking about up here is how they turn around and they insure the fossil fuel industry. But what's disturbing here is they're also the major investors. As I said, they take our premiums and they turn around and they invest in the fossil fuel industry. If you can pick up a recent newspaper article, there's an article in the Washington Post on the 9th. Bernie Sanders and 2 Democratic senators are starting investigations in the Senate, and they're bringing in these major insurance companies, and they're asking them very, very directly, why are they raising premiums? Why are they dropping coverage in Florida, California, and other places where there are wildfires and hurricanes that are being exaggerated, made worse by climate change? And the question that they're saying is, you are raising premiums and or dropping coverage altogether because of the high risk that is coming from climate change. And then you're turning around and being some of the largest investors in that same fossil fuel industry that's causing the climate change. And so finally, we've connected the dots for years. Again, go read all about it here with Ensure Our Future over here at Rainforest Action Network. But finally, 3 senators are bringing these insurance companies in, and they're holding them accountable, as they did with the airline industry, as they've done with the fossil fuel industry, as far as polluting our environment. So this is the surprise. Not only are they insuring, of course, we kind of expect that. That's what insurance companies do. But they're investing. In fact, if Liberty Mutual were a bank, they'd be in the top 10 as far as investors, financiers of fossil fuel projects. So these companies that are listed here, Allstate, Farmers, Geico, Hartford, Liberty Mutual, Nationwide, Progressive, State Farm, Travelers, you're familiar with all of them. A little side comment here. When you watch those commercials on television, do you ever hear any of them say anything about the product that they're selling? You don't hear, you might hear 15 minutes or less from that lizard, or you might hear bundle and save. Well, duh, that's how it works with all of them. They don't say anything about the product that they're offering because they're all offering the same product. They're here to entertain you, to get you to like their brand. That's why you get the lizard, you get the emu, you get Flo telling you a story. They're just trying to entertain you so that you go to their brand, because remember, you have to have their product in order to have your car and to have your home. So how do you get away from these folks, from Geico, which is Berkshire Hathaway, from State Farm, from Travelers? I had Travelers. They're the 4th, so we call them worst, when it comes to insuring and investing in fossil fuels. How do you get away from them? Well, it's kind of like we do with the banks. You leave them and you go to something that is local, small. I'll be a little bit flippant by saying what's happening if you go over to NYCM or Utica or Sterling or Preferred, all of those companies are, quote, too small to be dirty. They don't have enough premiums combined to go out and insure one oil rig, right? So you just want to get out of this crazy business that they're in and go into another realm where they are taking your premium dollars and they're investing them in the communities. Now, all of these, this is a cooperative. These 3 are mutuals. Mutuals are just like credit unions. Credit unions, the depositors own the credit union. Mutuals, the premium payers own the mutual company. Now, mind you, the dirtiest of all of them is Liberty Mutual, but go figure, they're insuring fossil fuel companies. So it ends up being that the fossil fuel companies are paying the premiums. They own Liberty Mutual. So you want to get down here where you're paying a premium to Utica Mutual because now you own that premium. And check it out. I happen to use Utica. I talked to their financial people and I asked them, who are you investing in? And they sent me a list of the dairies, the businesses in upstate New York and in Connecticut and North Carolina where they are investing their monies. Now, how do you get there? When you change your bank, you do that yourself. You just walk into a new bank or you go online and you open a new account and it's done. When you change your credit card, same thing. You go online or you go to your bank and you change it. Here, in most cases, you have to go to an independent insurance agent to make the change. I recommend for those of you that are in the Capital District in Columbia County that you talk to, say, Metz Wood. Metz Wood has been very, very responsive to anybody who's done these workshops. Now, all of these insurance agents, they offer Liberty Mutual and Travelers and the like, but they also offer NYCM, Utica, Sterling, and Preferred, and ask them for a quote. We suggest, and it's not to tell you something you probably already know, when you ask for a quote, do for an exact same. Take your old plan from Travelers and say, gee, what would it cost me if you were to get this exact same policy from one of these other people? It's an apples for apples quote. And then you ask the question, am I overinsured or underinsured? And a good insurance agent is going to do that for you anyhow. They're going to give you an exact quote, and then they're going to tell you if you're insured the way you should be, over or under. I found in my situation, I left Travelers, I went to Utica, and for the exact same coverage, I saved 28%. Travelers is known for excellent customer service, and they deserve it. But Utica Mutual also has excellent customer service. It's on par. I've had one minor claim, and it was handled very, very politely and courteously. So there are some others here. These are just some suggestions that you would go to your independent insurance agent. You cannot get any of these direct. You have to go through an independent insurance agent. And again, you can go to Neller if you're down in the Kingston area. There's Nagarata. There's many different insurance agents out there that will work with you. But there's also Vermont Mutual I didn't put on this list. There's one that you can get direct, just like the lizard up here with Geico, and that's called Amica, A-M-I-C-A. Amica has competitive rates, maybe a little bit higher, maybe not. They have excellent customer service rating from JT Powers Associates. Bob, you have a raised hand.
Yeah, I used to have Allstate, and I swore by Allstate until I found out about State Farm. The rates were so much cheaper. It was, and I started telling everybody about it, and they started switching off Allstate and getting State Farm because the rates are so much better. So my question to you is, if they're all selling the same product, how can one's rate be so much lower than another's?
Well, it's depending on who they're letting into their risk pool. Are in a particular region, are they over-insuring some properties that are more apt to have claims against them? It's who's doing the smarter business.
This is auto. It was auto insurance. But then the other thing I found out too was they increased my rate. During COVID, everything got increased because of, they just used COVID as an excuse to increase everything.
Well,
but my house rate went up.
A lot of people, their car insurance went down during COVID because they were driving less. But Bob, I want to point out something. State Farm, along with Allstate, if you wanted to say which one is worse when it comes to insuring and investing in fossil fuels, State Farm is worse than Allstate, and Allstate is pretty bad. State Farm is in the top 4 of insurance companies that you want to avoid if you're trying to get your premium dollars to go away from this insanity of financing and insuring climate destruction. So again, the purpose of this workshop is show you alternatives for getting away from these folks. And what we want to point out is there are alternatives. In my case, I saved. My partner, Joanne, she was with Allstate. She's now with NYCM. She saved. Others have come in where it was about the same. Others have come back and said, it cost me a little bit more, but I'm no longer funding climate destruction. Now, this brings us at 5 minutes before the hour, which gives us 35 minutes to do the investment side. So unless you have some questions on the insurance, we're going to move over to that area. Any questions? Wendy, I see your hand up.
Do you know if Kemper's good or bad offhand?
Oh, well, Kemper is an insurance agent, not an insurance company, I don't believe.
Thanks.
Do you know,
How about Adirondack Insurance?
again, that's an insurance agent, not an insurance company.
They use it's Assured Partners in Valatia. I'll go to the website and look into it.
Yeah, one thing to do here, we can just come off this website for a minute here if I can.
Got it, because my phone, I can't see your chair
Oh,
anyway.
you can't.
I'll look it up. No, my phone is acting up. Power's going on and off. I'll just look it up. That's okay.
Now, one of the disadvantages that we have with the home and auto insurance alternatives is with the banks, we had mighty deposits. And with investments, as you're going to see in a minute, we have as you sow. With credit cards, you just have to do, as we discussed, you have to find out who's issuing your card and go find where you're not having it issued by one of the fossil fuel banks. With home and auto insurance, we don't have a directory. There's nothing out there where you can go say, give me a list of small regional insurance companies that aren't investing in fossil fuels. That list does not exist. I'm working with Green America and a few other groups right now to put that list together. We have one for New York, we have one for Washington State, for New Jersey, for Massachusetts, but we don't have anything that is online right now. So I'm going to say to you that at any time, you can write to me at rivers.mountains@icloud.org, and we'll put that in the chat. And I gladly talk to you about your insurance company and where you might be able to find an alternative.
Thank you.
So investments, ready? Let me just direct you to the footer down here that Rivers and Mountains is not an investment or financial advisor or any other kind of advisor and does not make any claim on the advisability of investing in any particular company, investment fund, or vehicle. It's perfectly okay for me to talk about banks that I like, credit cards that I like, and even insurance companies and agents that I like. It's not okay for me to talk about these things when it comes to your investment portfolio. That is reserved for certified public accountants and financial advisors. So, financial institutions. We're talking here very specifically about mutual funds and exchange traded funds. When it comes to stocks that you own, if you want to have a fossil-free stock, you go with a fossil-free company. Somebody earlier said that they had Exxon stock. Well, you knew what you had, you got rid of it, you were free. But when you have these mutual funds and exchange funds, which make up our 401ks and a lot of our other investment portfolios, you don't necessarily know exactly what's in your fund. Now, when we talked about the banks, and I said that your deposits are loaned out in such a way that you have no say, they can take your money, you don't have a contract, they can go loan the money to whoever they want to loan to without asking you. That's not how your investments work. You have a very specific contract that says exactly where that money is going to go and exactly where that money is not going to go. The problem is that a lot of us get tied up into what we call these indexes. We're going to talk about index. And there's a passive index and there's an active index. we get sucked up into these passive indexes that play the entire breadth of the market, the full Standard & Poor's S&P 500. And in the breadth of the market, there's a lot of good things and there's a lot of bad things because it's playing the entire market. So if you want to get away from these passive indexes, otherwise, I don't want that fund, and I don't want that fund, and I don't want that company, and I'd like to have this. Now you're picking and choosing. You're screening out and bringing in other funds. That starts to become an actively managed fund, maybe a fully actively managed fund, and that becomes much more expensive. And that's what we're going to take a look at here momentarily. But first of all, on the fossil fuel frequently asked questions, excellent source from Stop the Money Pipeline. Read all about it. Also, our friends here at Green America again on divest from fossil fuels. They have some steps for divest and reinvest. Very worthwhile reading. And we're going to end this workshop by clicking on this button right here, Find Fossil Free Investments, because it's going to give us some directories on how we can find some green financial advisors and the like. But what we want to do, what we want to do right now is we want to use this search tool on finding our funds and exchange trade, mutual funds and exchange traded funds. And this is As You Sow. Click. And here's our website. So it's somewhat like Mighty Deposits, where we can go read about and do our research on various banks and are they doing good or not. But this is going to be for our funds. We're going to be looking for the name of the fund, the ticker, or the manager, and it's for our 401k, our retirement plan, our personal portfolio. Now, this is the fossil fuel fund. I'm going to show you two ways in which you find out about weapons. So first of all, let's go back here where we are. I want to go right into the depth of it. We're on the web page. We're all the way down here in the bottom. As You Sow, search tool, click. Menu, click. First of all, video tutorials. This website is so rich, it's worth reading an introduction. You don't need to look at these other ones, but an introduction is worth every minute that you're going to spend here and saving you time on navigating this back. Now, Invest Your Values, they also have here for deforestation, gender, weapons. If you click on more, you can see the full offering. Invest Your Values. Now, this workshop focuses on fossil-free funds, but you can also come and look at weapons-free, prison-free, tobacco-free, gun-free. Now, when you get into any one of these, there's another button that I'm going to show you to click so you can automatically check and see how that particular fund is performing on these other standards. So let's back out of this. We're in our menu. We go back to home. We're over here. So on fossil fuels, before we get into this too far, let's just take a look at the top rated funds that they have. This is just going to be a 3 or 4 minute orientation on what this whole chart is all about. And you can always click to get more funds. This just extends it down. So here they're taking a look at this arrangement of funds. One is the fossil fuel. These are toggled. So it goes from A, this is reverse order F. The next one is sustainability mandate. We like to see that the USSIF. This is a forum that ranks their sustainability as it relates to the environment. And you can see that a lot of them have none. There's another one where you'll see a check mark, and that's for Morningstar. We also want to know whether or not they're investing in fossil banks. Are they investing in fossil insurance companies? And also, what's important here is moving our money from doing harm to no harm, doing good. How do we know we have a fund that's actually out there that is in the Clean 200 fund? And so you can click on that and see what their ratios are. And this also is toggled from low. So the highest is 71. Quite candidly, you want to be looking for funds that come in right between, say, 15% and 25%. So let's go back to looking at some of the desired funds. Not only do you want to have a fund that is fossil fuel free, that has a good sustainability mandate, that has a good no fossil banks, no fossil insurance companies, and is at 24%. So you look at these top three here from Impacts and Amana. Impacts is a wonderful asset manager. Amana is also up there good. Parnassus, you may have heard of them. These are all excellent companies. Boston Trust, very aggressive in finding impact investing. They're doing good. But what about their performance? And here's where you want to find out how they've been performing over the years. Now, most financial advisors, they want to see this tracking right in with the market. And again, the idea is not to beat the market, but the idea is to be on par with the market. And the Standard & Poor's 500, the breadth of the market, has been performing in excess of 10% year after year for the past 30 years. So you'd like to see this number coming across here to be always somewhere real close to the 10% number. And you can see this fund from Amana Growth has an interesting expense ratio. Your financial advisor will guide you on that. You want to see that below 1. Here it's close to 1. Here it's close to 1. But this is in a good range. It has good performance over a long period of time. In fact, over the past year, when a lot of funds have not done well unless they were a fossil fuel fund, this one did quite well in the past year. You want to know more about it? Let's go back here and take a look. We know that it is fossil free because it had an A rating. We know that it has no banks and insurance companies that are in fossil fuel. Let's see what it was doing with this Clean 200. Now, this is what you use to find out whether a fund is dirty or clean. We're looking at a clean fund, so let's see what's going on here. It has 8 holdings, 24% of all the assets invested, so that's high. You want to know more about Green 200? You can read about how they've filtered this out to select these funds that are included to make the Green 200. And you can see on all 8 of them where that is at and how much. So what percent of your investments and how many dollars. So sometimes I'll get a portfolio, say from a faith-based institution on their endowment, and they'll say, Michael, how dirty is my fund? And I'll go through and I'll look at each one of their indexes and I'll tally up how many dollars are going in that are on a percentage basis, how many of them are clean and how many of them are dirty. And you can actually tell them based on their holdings, how much money they have invested in clean assets or dirty assets. So this is a wonderful tool for doing the type of research that we want to do. Let's go back and look at a dirty fund. Actually, does somebody have a fund that they would like to look up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, TIAA CREF.
Now, TIAA CREF, as you know, has morphed into, it's just now TIAA, and they have this new Veen you see down here. That's another product that they are branding these days. We're just going to type in for the search here because you don't have a particular ticker. This middle part right over here, that's the ticker number. But let's just go ahead and look at the asset manager itself. Whoops.
Oops.
What happened there? Let's go back. I just wanted TIAA. There we go. So this is all TIAA and new Venus throw in there. And you can see I could click on more funds and I can click on more funds because they have lots of them, not a whole lot. All right. And we can toggle up and down where they're really green ones. Come on. Stalled out on us there. Okay. So we click. Here's their really green ones all the way down. Now, quick advice here. You see real estate, more real estate. All real estate funds are going to be green by their very nature. So this is somewhat concerning. If I want a fossil-free fund from TIAA, the only fossil-free fund that I can get, looking here at the absolute clean, are real estate. And most of your financial advisors would say, be careful there, because you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. You want to be diversified. I know my financial advisor tells me not to put more than 10% into tech stocks. We definitely want to put 10%, but he doesn't want to put more than 10%. Now, a B rating here does not necessarily mean that they're in fossil fuels. They're getting a B rating here because they're investing in a fossil fuel bank. But if you scroll down more, you'll see even they drop off quickly. By the time they're getting into their large cap, mid cap funds, they're getting a C rating. So let's just go over and look at this fund right here, because it has a good clean energy rating of 24. And it's going to tell us, okay, 1.43% is invested in fossil fuels. They have 22 investments. It's only 1% of the assets, but it's still $140 million. And again, where this website is so beautiful, it actually tells you where the holdings are. So it's got 2 holdings in coal industry. Now, here you have to do extra research by Googling in, doing a web search on what is Vista Corp or what is the AES Corp. And here's a little bit of indicator that it's coal, it's transmission, utility, and also what we call macro climate. Bob, you have your hand up there. Yes, Bob.
Sorry, I got small hand trouble. The New York State Controller has got a big investment fund. I was personal friends with the Deputy Controller for years when he was Assistant Director of Taxation and Finance. So after I retired, I just called down to the Controller's office, see what they're doing with the money. You know, like you say, you make a really good point here. And by the way, the whole lecture is fantastic. Or not. So I said to them, how much money you got in the fossil fuels? And how much money do you have in the green investments? Well, I said that because the controller had a goal. I believe he was going to get rid of all fossil fuels by 2030. I said 2030. I said the Earth's going to be a cinder by 2030. You know, so I called in a couple of times, and all of a sudden, I left my number. This woman calls me back. She's pretty high up in there, I guess. And it turns out there's a special committee in the state Senate that was charged with looking after what they were going to do, what the controller's office was going to do. But they had a hands-off approach so long as they were satisfied, so they didn't follow them too closely. So I said, what are you doing? How many people have you got looking at brand new green investments? You know, she says, one person.
Yeah.
She says, you got to be careful. She says, you just can't be throwing the money away here and there and everything. And she got on and on. Then she got a little defensive. We had a heck of a long talk. And I said, so far as I'm concerned, I said, I take less than my retirement. You know, and she, well, most people don't feel that way, sir. She says, but I've got her number down to call back and follow up because they have, as you know, a tremendous amount of money. Look at what New York City did, but they didn't follow New York City's lead. You know,
Well, let me
And,
jump.
do you have that on this chart? Can you look up New York State retirement system and see where they are?
No, because what this is doing is this is looking at, again, I show you what would happen if you type in. Let me show you a few things about this and then talk about the state retirement system. And also because the question came in on TIAA, specifically what's going on with them, because as you know, the New York State teachers retirement system is not divesting, where the state retirement system is divesting, just maybe not as fast as we want. But again, what I want to do is I want to make certain that the participants here understand the richness of this. We went in here looking at this one particular fund under TIAA CREF. We came down here, we said, okay, this one looks pretty good. It has, or actually this one has some problems with it. We wanted to see what those problems were. I misspoke. And we came in here and we see where it had these holdings. And you can see they're in the coal industry. They're in coal-fired. They actually have one holding here with Vista Corp again. And you can go do your research and actually see what's going on. So just like we were able to look at the Clean 200 to see what good holdings they had, we can come in here and we can see what dirty holdings they have. But Bob, here, let me just kind of go in and show you what happens when you click on the New York State retirement system. See, it's not a fund in that sense. It is a whole retirement system. So there you have to find out where they're investing and literally go look at their ticker numbers. Does somebody have another fund that they'd like to look at? A Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street?
What about the Quaker fund? The Quakers have a number of funds where they invest your money in.
Do you know what its name is?
I just remember to do that, but I can't remember the name. I'll try to look it up while we're talking here.
Michael, how about Oakmark, OAKMARK fund? For funds, actually, they have a number.
Yeah, look. So let's just look at all of them. And so, oops, I didn't mean to hit that button. So here's Oakmark. It looks like they're using their own indexes because you just have the Oakmark International. They don't look like they have too many. How many funds do they have down here? Yeah, they got some Fs. Not a lot. So you can see here, there's not a lot. The best thing is always to have their ticker number. They have 3 funds. These are all the same fund. So this is a OAK-EX, OAK-EX, and then that's OAN, OAK, OEZ. So there's modest little differences in them, but they're investing in the same portfolios. That's why they have all the same data. So they only have this one that is fossil free across the board. They have these others that are not investing directly in fossil fuels, but they're into the banks or the insurance companies. These 4 have a better investment ratio in the Clean 200 than these. These are rather minimal. And then you can go down and look at the rest of these. But if you just want to look at, let's look at this, this second offering that they have here. And it's getting its B rating because of a bank. They have money in Lloyd's and Bank of America, and it's actually rather substantial. It's almost 9% of the fund. On the Clean 200, you can see they have 3 holdings off here into Google, Cap One Financial, and I don't know what SAPSC is yet. I have to look at it. It's a tech fund, but it's been rated in the Clean 200. Do you have a particular question about that fund?
The one I just sent you was Friends of Fiduciary. I put it in the chat.
Okay.
No, Michael, thanks. I was just curious to see how it comes up in the tool. Thank you.
Let's see what it's, I'm a little bit curious on its performances here. Well, it must be a fairly low risk fund because it's not performing real high. So it's invested very conservatively, obviously. And one thing that's a little bit discerning, it has very high expense ratios. So my guess is this is being somewhat actively managed on a very conservative, low risk portfolio because its yields are very conservative. But of course, then it means its yields are fairly safe. Otherwise, when the market was very volatile in the past 1 to 3 years, except for where everybody was doing good 2 years ago, it's been kind of steady across the mark. Bob, what was that one you were looking at again?
The one I was looking, I put it in the chat, Michael.
Okay, let me see if I can flesh that out.
It's Friends Fiduciary.
I'm not seeing my chat button for some reason.
I know I couldn't find mine either, and all of a sudden it hit it and it goes over to the right on the screen for some reason.
Let me just you say
It,
friends,
it doesn't matter. I can email it to you, Michael. Don't have to do it now.
If you exit full screen, you can see the chat. If you click the button.
Yeah, somehow it went off my screen, Mark. I don't know why. Huh. I still have all the talking. Bob, give me the name that you typed in there. You say friends?
Yeah, friendsfiduciary.org.
Yeah, see, it's not coming up. So that's not the name of the actual fund or the basically what you gave me was a website. Any other questions that you'd like to look up at another?
Wellsboro, look up Wellsboro Bank.
Oh, no, that's going to be a bank. That's not going to be.
No, no, but they do. Listen, my family started that bank. I guess I ought to know what they do. Okay.
Yeah, but they're not a fund.
I know, but look it up because they got all kinds of investments and everything. Just type in Wellsboro Bank, see what comes up.
No, but what I'm trying to tell you, Bob, that's not how this search engine works. You'd have to go to you'd have to go to that bank and
All
find
right,
out.
all right. I'll try that when I get to the site. Can you put
Okay.
the name of the site in the chat again? The URL.
You lost me.
Can you put the URL in the chat for the site, for this whole site? And by the way, who designed this site? Who came up with it?
Well, this is, again, you can read all about it. This is As You Sow. And it is a not-for-profit. They're made up of financial advisors that come out of green investments. All their data is non-proprietary, just like it was with Mighty Deposits. So the same data gets fed into Morningstar, gets fed into Bloomberg, gets fed into several other different types of search engines.
Okay, I see.
They've taken it and they've packaged it in this way that is most useful for us.
I see.
So that we can do it for fossil fuels and whatnot. Well, let me show you that. Wendy, when we were talking earlier, let's take Amana here. So if we're in Amana and we're looking them up, across the top here where it says fossil fuels, we can look about their banks. We can look here on the more.
Okay.
Click on the more. And now on Amana, which we know it has a good sustainability mandate. Here's all of its names, what's under management. But what I want to point down here is scroll, scroll, scroll. And here you see investor values. That other report card that we were looking at, here's where you can see on one screen, we know they're good on fossil fuels. What are they doing with deforestation?
Oh,
What are they doing down here with prison industrial complex? What are they doing with military weapons? And so if we just come down here and click, it's going to automatically take us over to military weapons. Isn't that wonderful? And we know that this fund is clean.
it is wonderful, frankly. I never seen anything like this, ever.
Right. And so like when I said that when you have Thanksgiving this next year, instead of watching a football game, you can go to Mighty Deposits. Well, this takes more time than that. So instead of having your pinochle club, have them all come over and hang out and play with this website, and you can do just an amazing amount of research.
Oh, yeah.
Now, for me, I'm not joking here, but when the nights are long and the days are cold, I spend a lot of time on As You Sow. This time of year it gets to be a little bit hard because I want to be in the garden, right, Wendy? But we got 6 minutes left here, and I want to spend that with one other thing. This is how you can do all your research yourself. Here, excuse me just a minute while I need to get back on shared screen.
Oh, thanks for putting that in the chat, Michael.
Okay, so we went to workshop. And we're all the way down here on investments. And we were over here with As You Sow, right smack dab in the middle, find fossil-free investments. So if you're like me, and I obviously have a fairly good understanding about how mutuals and ETFs work, and I know how indexes work, and I know how to read all those charts, I still feel a little insecure about managing my money without professional advice. So with the banks, we did that work ourselves. With the credit card, we did that work ourselves. With the insurance companies, well, maybe we have to go to an independent insurance agent for a little bit of a help. So what do we do here? If you're looking around for a green financial planner, we find this with when we're looking with endowments, whether they be from universities or faith-based organizations or not-for-profits, that quite often the number one obstacle to making a change to move our money from harm to no harm is the financial advisor. They're stuck in an old world. They believe in myths. They believe in outdated data. They use this word called fiduciary responsibility, and they put a period at the end of that. Now, all of you on this call, you already know that that period needs to be erased, because fiduciary responsibility doesn't mean anything if you've destroyed the economy by destroying the climate in the next 20 years. So we have to be looking at fiduciary responsibility as being moving our finances out of climate destruction. And so you got to go find yourself a financial planner that has that understanding, and preferably that has that belief. So here on this website, I kind of clicked without taking you through it. So we went to Green America, and we have find fossil-free financial products and services. That's what we got by clicking on that button. And it's going to give us these other buttons. And we want to look at financial planners, asset managers, and mutual funds. Quickly. Financial planners. These are folks that help us find where we can have our funds invested in such a way that we are competing equally with the market. Not necessarily beating it, just we're in the game. You'll notice here this amalgamated, we talked a lot about Amalgamated Bank. They're a certified B Corp. They have financial advisors that work through Infinex, well worth looking at. Scroll down here. Hanson's Advisory Services. This is an all-women's group out in Syracuse. Horizons is nationwide. JSA, just to pause here, they're now known as Longwave. I have no idea why this hasn't been updated. This is Jeff Scales in Rhinebeck. Jeff has been doing green financial advising since before it was called SRI. He's been doing this 30 plus years. He's now retiring and he's working with Greenwave, with Longwave. And now one of the problems with some of these folks is he will not take a portfolio that's less than 250,000. Natural investments, they're all over the country. Most of their minimums are 500,000 to $1 million. But I also want to point out a friend of ours, some of you may know him, Harry Moran from Sustainable Wealth Advisors up in Saratoga. He's also very active with the UU community up there. He's very good friends with Becky Meyer and me. And he's also very active in the Divest New York Coalition. That's where some of you may know Harry. Now, Harry, for the most part himself, he wants a portfolio of 250,000, but some of his advisors in his alliance, they have no minimum. So if you're looking around for a financial advisor, I could give you some names if you were to write to me, or you can take your time just looking at this list. Let me just quickly get you through the other two buttons before we take some questions. Asset managers. Well, it ain't all about Vanguard and BlackRock and State Street and the like. There are ample financial asset managers out there that are in the business of customized fossil-free portfolios. And they include Amalgamated, Boston Trust, we mentioned. Calvert, now, Calvert's still cool. They got bought up by Morgan Stanley, but there's a firewall between the two companies. So it's owned by Morgan Stanley, but the money is not crossing over the gap. So don't run away from Calvert. They're still good guys. You can see a lot of these other ones that you might know their name. Trillium is very, very popular. They're out there advocating louder than anybody at the boardroom for divestment. And one more click while you're fishing around here, the mutual funds themselves. And this is where these are broad-based mutual funds that exclude fossil fuel companies by policy. As well, taking a look at Green Century. Green Century is working on a project with me right now. Parnassus, you might have heard about. Here's Trillium again. This used to be the PACs. It's now called Impacts. These are alternative companies that have been around for a long time. They're not fly-by-nights. So when somebody says there are no alternatives to Vanguard, well, yes, there are. There's quite a few.
The Quakers use Trillium.
Good, good. Now, again, I have to be careful what I say, but I hear many, many good things about Trillium. So we made it in 90 minutes.
Yeah, that was, I don't know how you did it.
Well,
Now,
again,
there's a recording, right? There's a recording of this.
yes. And again, we covered a lot of territory in 90 minutes, but our goal here was to show you that alternatives exist and where you can go find them. If you want to dig deeper, again, I do this. This is my volunteer work I do. Our overhead is covered by New York Renews and Stop the Money Pipeline. And so if you have questions, please get in touch with me.
Well, the first thing I want to say is to thank you so much for putting this on. And I think if we tried to advertise it as much as we could, but there's no way you could express the enthusiasm of this workshop. Well, Wendy did because she's had it. And but now that I've had it, I mean, it's just contagious. And can we make that link available, Emily, for the recording on our website? We'll get our website person, Laura, to make it available. Then people can, you know, they can look at it and spread the word.
Mark, you have your hand up there.
Yeah. Considering that this is a peace group, although I personally am more concerned about the sustainable energy. Wendy asked about weapons-free investments could do. I didn't see that in the Green America and that list across the top categories. Are there any ways to search on any of these main sites you mentioned for weapons-free specifically?
Well, again, Mark, what we tried to show you is when you go to As You Sow and you go up into the menu bar, you can find not only the fossil fuel index, but also the weapons and the guns and the tobacco. They're all indexed there. I showed you two ways of accessing that. If you're in one particular realm, like say weapons, and you want to find out about their gender equity, you just click on that More button. And then otherwise you go over to the menu and scroll down and you go to that page. And so doing your research on fossil fuel orientation, you're doing it on a weapons orientation. So it's the same material. It's just what realm did you enter into? I also just quickly, I see more hands up here. I'm sharing my website. I'm going to come off here. This is the workshop calendar. And you can see here that in 23, in January and February and even March, we were very, very busy. And now it's getting slow. Guess why? It's summertime. But Last night I did the Olympia Unitarian Universal Environmental Action Team. This is the 5th workshop I've done with them in the past 2 years. So the reason I'm saying that is that a few weeks, months from now, let's do it again.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Definitely.
Wendy, your hand's up.
A couple things real quick, because I know, does anybody else have a question? Because I've already asked several. If somebody else has a question.
I just wonder what Michael's email address is.
Okay, I thought we put it in the site, but I'm going to give it to you again. Do rivers.mountains@icloud.com.
Thanks.
So it's Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith. So it's rivers.mountains. It's plural, rivers.mountains@icloud.com.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have a question? Because I can stifle.
Yeah, Emily just put it into the chat there. Good.
I had a question. You talked about the insurance and what they had, these huge pools of money to invest. Okay. And that was for car and house, right?
Well, they get it from everything, but think
That's
of
my question is, what about medical? What do they do with all the money they make in a medical? Where is that money invested?
Okay, the medical insurance companies are completely separate from the home and auto and other liability insurance companies. Now, you may have a common owner. For example, MetLife used to be in all sorts of segments. Their home and auto portion, they sold out to Farmers, which is owned by Zurich. But their medical is still there. The only insurance company, medical insurance company that I know of that is investing in fossil fuels is Aetna.
Oh, I would think that my insurance companies are definitely invested in fossil fuels.
I've done some scant research on this, and the only one that's kicked up is Aetna.
Oh, really? No. Well, they're doing something with the money.
Well, hopefully they're investing in hospitals and
Yeah, yeah.
and again, like all of these companies, all of them, most all of them, they're investing in good things as well as bad things. Again, one of the things that we hate about the stock market when you have these passive indexes is they are based on the breadth of the entire market. And the entire market has a lot of really good stuff in it. All the wonderful things that get done through publicly traded companies, that's in the market. But also there's all the bad things that are there. Where we really get upset about the Wall Street banks and the Wall Street insurance companies, and they are disproportionately, I mean, if they were proportionally investing across the span, X% here, X% there, Y% here, they would still be dirty, but they would be blended out. They are disproportionately going into fossil fuels. Now, personally, I want to go find insurance companies and banks that are fossil fuel free, right? And that's why you can go into As You Sow and you can go into Mighty Deposits and you can find yourself moving away from doing harm to no harm to actually doing good. Wendy.
A quick question. Two questions, but you can combine them, I think. First of all, like when I was working on getting this divested on, but John Heitzman at Green Bank is my advisor, and I really love him. And I explained to him what I wanted to do, and he's been helping. Does he use your product? Do you know, since you bank at Green Bank, have you talked to John about
Yeah,
it?
I know John
Yeah.
quite well, actually. And
Yeah.
I know, again, I have to be careful about products that I'm recommending and whatnot like that, but
Right.
I know he uses Calvert. And
I have Calvert. He uses it.
He uses Jackson National. Now, Jackson National is not necessarily a green financial asset manager, but they're not so bad either. They have quite a few green products. You know, one of the things that we don't like about a lot of these company held funds, you've heard of what's called the default. And the default will be with Vanguard. And what we're trying to get them to do is get rid of Vanguard as the default and start putting in things like Trillium as your default. So they automatically set you up for a dirty fund unless you force them into a green fund. And then often their green funds are Fidelity. Well, thank you. That ain't green in my book. I mean, it's better than Vanguard, but it ain't green. You know, I have a joke that I tell. I know we're into extra minutes here, which is no problem, but a joke that I tell is I can get a green fund, only a couple from Vanguard. I can get several green funds from BlackRock. I can get a lot of green funds from Fidelity, but I don't want to be sitting at the table looking across at Daddy Warbucks. My joke is I can get my tofu at Walmart, but I don't. I get my tofu at the the co-op around the corner. And so that's where I want to go and get my fossil-free fund from a green asset manager. That's like Bob Why, like Trillium and Calvert and Impacts, and they're there. I showed you the list. I want those guys sitting across the table from me, not Daddy Warbucks.
Thank you.
Word two questions. Number one, our family lost a lot of money with Merrill Lynch, like a lot of other people, and they were most unscrupulous people. I'll say no more on that one. I forget what my other point was.
So Wendy and Emily, if you want to like maybe down the line set up another and think about it this way. I actually prefer doing the 1 hour on banks, credit cards, and insurance, and then another hour where we just do investments. And for your group, if we had that full hour, we could actually start it through the lens of, as Mark Schaefer was bringing up, instead of having our landing page be the fossil fuel page, the landing page could be the weapons page. It's the same thing. It's just you enter through a different portal.
Yeah, let's do that. Maybe you know, when it's dark at night and it's cold out, let's do it again. This is the third time and I'm still always mixed up. I'm not good at this stuff.
Well, we're often asked where to start. And my advice is start with your bank, because it's easy to get to a community bank. It's easy to get to a credit union. We have
Now,
some.
well, what about the new credit union, SEFQ, that merged with another credit union, Broadview? Now everything's Broadview, and now everything is screwed up to a fairly well, because anytime you merge two banks together, there's big trouble. And now things have been all screwed. The card was invaded. Services are down. The people were stressed. I really miss my little credit union. And the other thing is, I am very worried that if I look into the credit union, how they're using the money.
Well, again, they're a credit union, so they're not going to be in fossil fuels. But the thing with Broadview, SEFQ, is you look at it, they're down to $51 out of every 100, 51% going back into the community. You looked at Greylock Federal Credit Union, or go look at Sunmark. Sunmark is the old Schenectady GE credit union. Go look at Sunmark if you want to do a credit union. Now, there's also some national credit unions. There's Self-Help Credit Union out of the Carolinas that's just outstanding. They're amazing what they're doing. And there's another credit union in Colorado. It's not a brick and mortar, called Clean Energy Credit Union. And all of their deposits are going to loans in renewable energy. That's what they're dedicated to. Now, I like to have a credit union that I can go to. You can't do that with Self-Help or with Clean Energy. But take a look at Sunmark if you're over in the Albany area. If you're anywhere over our way, Bob, it's Greylock there in Hudson. What?
You know, the thing is, I'm 77 years old. Okay. I'm going to tell you something right now. Life is difficult for me every single day. And for me to make the kinds of transitions that this program is suggesting, morally and philosophically, I'm for them. Energetically, like I had two credit cards with a SEFQ. They've been compromised twice, each card.
Yeah, but
twice.
those aren't dirty cards though. And so you may be having some card problems, but they're not dirty cards. Sefco issues their own card.
I know they do, but I don't know what the hell is going on. But I'm just saying that's just part of the stress of life, and I can't take any more stress with changing.
We should probably let Michael and Emily go.
All right, I'm sorry.
But
keep on
I want
talking.
Michael, because you weren't seeing the chat, there were so many thank yous from people that had attended that said thank you for this wonderful presentation, in case you couldn't see that.
I'm looking at them now. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, and Emily, so nice of you to be putting links in as Michael was talking about them. That was really wonderful. Thank you so much. You're such a wonderful asset to us. Peace Action New York. Emily's just.
How do you, Emily? How do you save the chat? I can't remember. You click on that little thing. Click on that little thingamajig.
Yeah, there should be a button at the bottom of the chat. I think it's like the little 3 dots, and then it'll say save chat. I'm going to stop the recording now. Because
Oh, show chat previews.